So you've probably heard about a thing called the textile density, but apparently no one properly explains what that is. And even if they do, they're saying things like, oh, textile density is when one textile per 1 centimeter is equal to whatever, and it just gets so complicated that you need to learn this, but it's just so hard. It seems hard. I've been there, trust me. But then after I've found out the underlying principles, it became so much easier. Trust me when I say this. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Benjamin, and I'm a self-taught 3D artist. Now let's get back to the video. And so essentially, textile density means how much texture detail each part of your 3D model gets. Simple as that. And here, as an example, I've prepared a cube, though it is more of a half cube, but that's a completely different story. So now, if we go to UV editing, I've prepared it here a 1K texture, UV grid texture, which is 1024 pixels across the whole thing, right? So now, if you press A, you can see that this whole thing, the whole cube, takes about 3 out of 4 of the entire texture space, which is quite nice, I'll be honest. Now, one of the first things I just want to say is you need to know about a thing called Texel consistency and what that is. Let me show you. So let's say this part of a cube is way smaller than the other ones, the UV shell, right? Then if we check right here, you can see that the top part is more stretched compared to these ones right here. And what it does is basically uses the less amount of pixels of the entire texture resolution. And because of this, it gets more blurry. Though in this case, you cannot see the blurriness because the texture itself is quite simple. But if we had like a lot of texture maps, like normal maps, ambient occlusion, you would definitely see it. In this case, you barely do see it because it's just simple texture. And so the first thing that you need to do is just make sure that it averages with the scale of its own object. What do I mean by this? If we press A, choose all of our UV shells and go to UV and press the average island scales, and what it does basically, it averages the size of the separate UV islands based on their area in 3D space. And now you can see that they're pretty much similar. I can snap them to a vertex. Boom. You can see now it averages them all to their size of the look. So this is the first thing. Now the other thing is if we go to, let's say, textile density checker, and again press A, and we choose units, pixels to centimeters. You can choose pixels to meters or to feet, or inches. Depends on whatever your metric you're using, the metric system. Then texture size is, well, it depends, but just in this scenario, in this case, I'm using 1K resolution. And then we choose the selected faces and calculate textile density. Boom. So firstly, we can see the thing called UV space, which basically means how much of a UV space do we use for our cube, which is 62%, which is really, really nice. Then the density is 7.7 pixels to centimeters. Now, firstly, I just want to say that the higher the count, the better it's going to get, the better it's going to look. The lower it is, more blurry and ugly it's going to be. That's just the truth. So you can see it's two separate things, which is pixels and centimeters. So basically, I can show you once again, two things directly influences the count. The first one is the UV space, the how much UV shells take of the UV space. Because if I increase their size, let me turn off the snapping. If I increase their size to about this much, and then I do the calculate textile density once again, you can see that the count increased from 7 to 8, which is good. And now if I reduce the size, you can see the density went even lower, 4.8. And honestly speaking, it is not really good because we have a whole free spaces. We have a lot of free space and we are barely using it. So make sure you always use as much as possible. Now the second thing is the centimeters or inches, whatever metric it is for you. So the simple way to measure this is you go to the measure tool, you grab from uppermost, the top part to the lowest part, and you can see it says 60 centimeters. Now if I reduce the size of this cube this much, and I do the calculate textile density once again, boom, it just increased itself to 15.7 pixels to centimeters. And now basically, the bigger your object is, the less count it's gonna get. However, the smaller it is, the more crispier it's gonna get. Now the question becomes, if let's say I want to make a huge object, like a very big one. Actually, I have an example. Instead of a cube, I'm gonna use the sword, right? It's quite huge. And if we go to UV editing, wait just a second. Oh, yeah. This one is actually 2K resolution, so I need to choose the 2K. And now we do the calculate textile density. Boom. It says that I'm currently using 44% of the UV space, and the density is 8.6. So what do we do in this case? Since it's not a simple cube, you grab the measure tool once again, and then you measure it from the uppest part to the lowest one. And you can see it says 238 centimeters, which is insanely huge. Like most of the people in this world are about 170. Like this sword is taller than probably everyone who's watching this video right now, including you. Yes, you too. And so you can also measure it up from the widest parts, 57, which is in this case not that bad, but still very huge. What do we do? Once again, go to edit mode, scale this down a little bit. Now measure it once again. So if you wanna, by the way, delete this measure, you just press it, X, and boom, ready. Yeah. Now measure it once again from the uppest part to the bottom. Now it's 191 centimeters. Still quite huge, because usually swords are not that big, they're much smaller. We want even smaller sword, so we then reduce it a little bit again. By the way, usually swords are about 160, 170-ish centimeters, so this should work. Now once again, measure tool, top part, lowest part, 122. Now in this case it is a bit too small, so now increase it like this much. Let's say once. Oh wait, let me delete this one. Let's see once again. Okay, now I'm confused. Let me delete these first. Boom. Yeah. From the topest part, from the bottom. Yeah, 146. Now it's a bit too small, so we increase it a little bit more. This should work now. Okay, 176. Now this is a good size. Now this is more realistic. And if we go to calculate textile density once again, we can see that it went up by like 3 pixels per centimeter, which is really nice. As I said, the more the count is, the better it is. And so if let's say we nail down the size, which by the way, whenever you start working, always just make sure that your measurements are real world size. That's the first thing. And after that, let's say you nail that, as I said, you nail down the size of the object. Then make sure you're using as much of UV space as possible and do the correct UV unwrapping. Then, now let's say those two are nailed down. What else could we do possibly that will make it go up? Now, the first thing is just increasing the texture size, because let's say I increased it to 4K, it now became 23 pixels to centimeters, which is insanely good. Like for a sword, for just a weapon, that's a very, very good texel density. But we don't need this much. We can just have 2K. That's the first thing. The second thing is using multiple UV islands. So let's say using UV islands just for the blade, UV islands just for the grip, for the pommel, for the guard, whatever. And you separate them all together and put them in different UV spaces. That will also increase your textile density. That's number two. Number three is tiling. If you use tiling UVs, like tileable textures, that will also very much increase the textile density. Now the fourth thing is the trim sheets. I have prepared one trim sheet right here, you can see. Now the trim sheets are usually for environmental artists, so as long as you're not an environmental artist, you're not gonna really use it. Just saying it. But if you are, you will definitely use that one. So what is this for? This thing is for modular assets. Basically, they're making, let's say, a wall, right? And then they're stretching the UVs across this whole thing right here, then here, and maybe there. And then they build it like a Lego, like a builder. And it becomes a really good looking wall or door or whatever they're building. And with this, they can save a lot of texture spaces. Like a lot. This always works. Oh yeah, and lastly, I just want to show you that here, if you go to scene, go to units, you can choose the unit system from metric to imperial, just in case if you're from United States. So if I make this imperial and do the measure tool once again, now you can see it is like it's measuring up by feet, not by like, yeah, it's completely different now. It was measuring by meters, now it's measuring by feet. Alright, hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. Oh, and by the way, I have a free community and I have some free stuff in there, free courses. Check that as well, and I'll see you around.